Okay, so How to Think. It's a bold title, no question. But what really has me hooked is that we're looking at a draft today. Like, we're getting a sneak peek before it's even finished, you know?
Oh, drafts are fascinating for that reason. You see the ideas taking shape, the back and forth.
Totally. And with this draft, it feels so personal. Like, we're getting a guide to navigating not just the world, but how we think in it.
And that's key, right? The author's big thing is shifting from what to think to how we think.
Totally. They even talk about their own journey, all the struggles that made them write this guide in the first place. It's kind of refreshing, that vulnerability.
Well, none of us have it all figured out, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that's the point. The author jumps right into this need for balance, though. Logic and emotion. They actually compare it to, get this, baking a cake.
All right, you have to explain that one.
Think about it. Too much flour, your cake's dry. Too much sugar, it's sickeningly sweet. It's finding that middle ground that matters. Same with how we think. Too logical, we're rigid. Too emotional, we're all over the place.
Huh. That's actually really smart. And that balance, it's like a superpower, isn't it? Helps you make decisions, connect with people better. It reminds me, actually, of this one time when
All right, well, I want to hear this. But before you jump in, the author uses this balance idea to introduce what they call foundational knowledge. And it's three things: culture, science, and philosophy.
All right, now we're getting into my territory a bit. Why those three? What's the link the author's making?
So culture, right, it gives us context. All those stories, values, traditions we grew up with, that shapes how we see the world. Then you've got science, a way to understand the natural world through experiments, observations. And philosophy, that's where we tackle the big questions. What even is knowledge? What's the meaning of life? Like, to really think, you got to draw from all of these.
Like having different lenses, and each one shows you a different part of the picture. Seems like the author's also big on working smarter, not just harder. They bring up the Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule.
Oh, absolutely. Focus your energy on what gets the most results. Don't get lost in the weeds. Find the core stuff and master that.
That is so my philosophy, especially with learning. I want the good stuff, the insights that actually change how I think, which is why I was glued to the section on history, memory, identity. The author doesn't pull punches. They say history isn't just facts in a book.
Right. It's interpretation. Whose stories get told, whose are left out. Realizing that history is constructed, that's what makes us think more critically about it.
And then they tie that to our own memories, which, let's be honest, aren't always accurate. Emotions, biases, just time itself, it all warps things.
And that's where the author's emphasis on forgiveness is so powerful. Our memories aren't perfect, neither are other people's. It's about empathy, understanding.
That's a profound way to look at it. Not erasing the past, but understanding how it made us. And speaking of different viewpoints, the author then gets into traditions. They've got this line about,
Respecting their purpose, but also being open to adapting them. It's like walking a tightrope, honoring the past without being stuck in it.
it's like that saying, tradition isn't worshiping ashes, it's preserving fire. You're keeping the flame going, but letting it burn in new ways, too.
Right. And that openness, embracing how ideas evolve, the author keeps coming back to that, especially when they get to art. They see it as this powerful way to communicate what logic alone can't.
100%. Words just don't cut it sometimes, you know? Music, a painting, a film. They hit us in the gut, spark feelings we don't even have words for.
Exactly. Art taps into different ways of knowing, connecting deeper than words or numbers. Which actually leads us to what the author says about nature's beauty.
This is where their message really clicked for me. It's not just about sunsets being pretty, it's about feeling connected to something bigger than ourselves, you know?
What fascinates me is how the author links that appreciation to, well, our survival. We're wired to find nature beautiful because deep down it represents life itself.
That makes so much sense, and it reminds me of this one time.
Hold that thought. Got to unpack this idea of beauty being subjective too. The author's point is embracing that actually makes us more empathetic.
Oh, I like that a lot. It's not about forcing your idea of beauty on others. It's what do you find beautiful and what's that tell me about you?
Turns judgment into curiosity, right? You start noticing beauty in unexpected places, appreciating all the different ways people experience the world. Which, this leads perfectly into how the author sees technology. It's complicated.
They don't sugarcoat the downsides, that's for sure.
Not at all. Privacy concerns, how fast misinformation spreads, even tech addiction, how it distracts us from what matters. They lay it all out.
Which is why they're so big on media literacy. Being able to actually think for yourself online, that's vital.
It is questioning sources, finding different viewpoints instead of just passively scrolling. And it's more than just being smart online. The author also digs into digital ethics.
So crucial, especially now. We might feel anonymous online, but our actions have real impact. Words have power, and it's on us to use them well.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That responsibility, doing what's right even when no one's watching, the author connects that to education too. They see it as the key to.
Lifelong learning. It's not the degree, it's that you never stop learning. You're
Yeah.
challenging what you think you know, you're engaged with the world.
Precisely. It's that always be learning mindset. And get this, the author actually wants us to use the scientific method on our own beliefs.
Oh, I love that. Instead of our thoughts and feelings being these unquestioned truths, we can test them out, see if they actually hold up.
Before we get there, though, got to touch on the author's overview of the natural world. They bring in physics, chemistry, biology, earth science. It's like this amazing tapestry of...
Interconnectedness, like to understand one part of nature, you got to understand how it all connects.
Exactly. And they make a good case for why understanding the science stuff matters to everyone.
Because, whether we like it or not, we live in a world shaped by science. Climate change, making healthcare decisions, even just understanding the news, you need that basic scientific literacy.
100%. And speaking of big questions, critical thinking, the author dives into philosophy,
Yeah.
but in a way that actually makes sense.
They find that sweet spot, right? Question everything, but do it with humility, with respect for other views. It's not about being right, it's about having the conversation.
And being open-minded, especially when it comes to purpose and meaning. The author straight up says, it's not something you find out there in the world.
It's what you create, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. We get to decide what matters to us, what gives our lives purpose. And the author links that to their whole section on identity, too. It's about looking inward, not just accepting what society tells us we should be.
It's about realizing you're not just a product of your environment. You have a say in who you become. And speaking of shaping your own destiny, the author tackles free will versus determinism. Are we really in control of our choices?
Or is it all pre-programmed, some big cosmic play we're just acting out? It's enough to make your head spin. Instead of getting lost in the philosophy of it all, the author focuses on why this question matters at all.
Right, it makes you examine your choices, your impact on the world. It's a deeper level of thinking about yourself.
Which is way more valuable than just getting an answer handed to you, right?
Yeah.
Make you think for yourself.
Exactly. And speaking of mind-bending ideas, the author gets into consciousness. What does it mean to be aware, to experience the world from inside your own head?
We all know we're conscious, but try explaining what that is. It's like trying to grab water. You know, it's there, but it slips through your fingers.
And the author doesn't act like they've got it all figured out either.
Yeah.
They approach it with a sense of wonder, exploring different ideas, but being okay with the mystery of it all.
Staying curious, asking those big questions, even without having all the answers. And that same openness, they bring it to a topic that's often tricky. God and spirituality.
They handle it really well, don't they?
Yeah, with a lot of grace. Recognizing that people have different beliefs, different experiences. It's about understanding, not convincing anyone.
Exactly. Your beliefs are just one perspective. You always learn something by hearing from others.
100%. And speaking of broader perspectives, I thought the author's take on death was really powerful. They say, don't face it with fear, but with
Acceptance. It's a reminder to really live, to appreciate the time we have.
They even have this part where they compare life to a candle flame.
Burning bright for a little while, then inevitably going out. It's about savoring each moment, making your life matter.
Such a strong image. And it ties back to what the author keeps saying, finding meaning even when things are tough.
Exactly. Life's not always easy, but it's full of beauty, chances to grow, connect with others.
And it's about embracing the whole ride, good and bad, using it to become your best self.
Well said.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about so much, the power of thought, why learning matters, the beauty of nature, even consciousness. It's been quite a ride.
It has. And yet, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
That's what excites me about this how to think stuff. It's not giving you answers, it's making you ask better questions.
It's about giving you the tools so you can navigate not just the world, but your own mind.
And that, if you ask me, is the ultimate adventure.
It really is. So out of those 9 skills the author lists, any grab your attention right off the bat.
Goal setting, always. I work best when I've got something to aim for. It gives me that sense of purpose. But I'll admit, big goals can be kind of paralyzing. Luckily, the author had a great way to deal with that.
Oh yeah, the recipe analogy, right? Don't try to eat the whole cake at once. Instead, you break it down. Ingredients, Preheat the oven.
It's like taking that huge goal, writing a book or running a marathon, and making it smaller chunks, milestones you can actually hit. Suddenly, it's less scary.
Exactly. And each little win keeps you going. But it's not just about setting any old goal. You got to think about them critically, too. And that's another skill they talk about, critical thinking.
Which, you could argue, underpins everything else, right? Good decisions, understanding stuff, even just navigating life. You need that critical thinking muscle.
100%. The author breaks it down, too. Question your assumptions, look at the evidence, watch out for bias, your own and what you're reading. It's about being more discerning, not just accepting things at face value.
So important now, with the internet just throwing information at us. How many times you seen a headline and thought, wait, is that even true?
All the time. That inner skeptic, that's your friend. Who's saying this? Is there another side to the story? That kind of thinking. And then being able to communicate that well, that's where it gets interesting.
And the author doesn't forget about empathy either, which we talked about earlier.
Totally. Active listening, what's not being said, how your words might land on someone. Communication's a two-way street. You got to be in tune with the other person.
Reminds me of that quote, people forget what you said, what you did, but they never forget how you made them feel. Communication, when it's good, it's about connection.
Beautifully put. Now, the author also talks about time management as a skill, but...
You know, I think we can give that one a pass for now. Our listeners, they've got that figured out. They're all about maximizing their time. That's why they love this show.
Exactly. Maximum insights, no time wasted. So, instead of time management, let's hit on something else, something people often miss. Mindfulness. In this world, it's always go, go, go. Mindfulness can be huge.
I used to think it was kind of hokey, but then I tried some simple stuff. Few minutes each morning, just sitting, breathing. The difference in my stress levels, it's amazing.
That's awesome to hear. And it shows what mindfulness can do. Training your mind to be present. You notice your thoughts, your feelings, without judgment.
It's like hitting pause on that mental chatter and just being, which honestly is kind of rebellious these days.
Totally. And the beauty is you don't need anything special.
Yeah.
Just find moments throughout the day, paying attention to your breath, really tasting your food, noticing what's around you.
Finding those little bits of calm in the craziness. And I've noticed when you're more mindful, all that other stuff like critical thinking, being empathetic, it gets easier.
It's like mindfulness lays the groundwork so you can build those other skills on top of it.
Showing up as your best self, basically. Now, we touched on it briefly, but I want to circle back to the author section on nature. Physics, chemistry, biology, earth science. It's like they're showing this incredible
Interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And it's more than just saying, oh, nature's complex. It's about realizing we're part of that web, not separate from it.
Right. Our survival literally depends on a healthy planet. Understanding the science, that's how we make smart choices about climate change, pollution, all of it.
We impact the planet, we impact ourselves. It's all connected.
So important to remember. And it makes me think of what you said earlier about the author wanting us to use the scientific method on our own beliefs.
Exactly. Become a researcher of your own mind, basically.
I love that. We're all scientists in the lab of our own lives.
And speaking of exploring how we know what we know, the author takes this deep dive into philosophy.
Which can sound kind of intimidating. But they make it make sense, you know?
They really do. And I like that they're not afraid to embrace the big questions, even if we don't have all the answers. It's about the search, the joy of figuring things out.
Expanding how you see things, realizing there's not always one right answer. And that's super clear in how the author talks about purpose and meaning. They say, it's not something you find out there.
You create it.
Which is powerful. We're not just along for the ride, we're the authors of our own lives.
Exactly. And that leads us to another juicy one. Free will versus determinism. Are we calling the shots?
Or is it all pre-decided like some cosmic script we're just reading? The author tackles that one head on.
And instead of just giving an answer, they make you think about why the question even matters. How does believing in free will or not believing in it change how you actually live?
Way more thought-provoking than a simple answer, right? Makes you figure out where you stand.
Totally. And while we're on the topic of mind-blowing stuff, the author dives into consciousness. What is it to be aware? To experience the world from inside your own head.
We know we're conscious, but try putting it into words. It's like, I don't know, trying to nail Jell-O to a wall.
And the author's honest about it. They don't pretend to have it all figured out. But there's a real sense of wonder there, exploring the different ideas, but being okay with the mystery of it all.
That open-mindedness, they bring it to a topic that can be kind of touchy too. God and spirituality.
Yeah, and they do it really well.
Right. Recognizing people have different beliefs, different experiences. It's about listening, trying to understand, not about changing anyone's mind.
Exactly. Your beliefs are your own, but there's always something to learn from other perspectives.
Totally. And speaking of bigger perspectives, I thought the author's take on death was really interesting. They're like, don't be afraid of it, approach it with.
Acceptance. And use it to remind yourself to live. Your time is precious.
They have this whole part comparing life to,
To a candle flame, burning bright but eventually going out. It's about savoring your time, making it meaningful.
such a powerful way to look at it. And it ties back to what they keep saying, finding your purpose, even when things are tough.
Life throws curveballs, but it's also beautiful, full of chances to learn, to connect.
And it's about embracing the whole ride, good and bad, becoming the best version of yourself because of it.
Beautifully said. It really is, isn't it? Like you never truly arrive. You just keep exploring, you know?
Fun percent.
And speaking of things we got to explore more, the author never actually defines success. It's like they hand you the toolkit and say, all right, go build your version of it.
I love that. It's up to you to figure out what it means. Because there's no one right answer, is there?
Exactly. For someone, it might be that corner office, the big paycheck. For someone else, it's helping their community, having a family, making art. It's all valid.
And that's what makes the how to think stuff so cool. It's not telling you what to chase after. It's giving you the skills to figure that out for yourself. Then go after it in a smart way.
It's like, here's how to think for yourself, make decisions you actually believe in, build a life that feels real to you.
And that, if you ask me, is way closer to what success actually is. Living on your terms and always being open to learning new stuff along the way. Man, I couldn't put it better myself. This has been amazing. Not just about thinking, but about how to actually live, you know?
It really has. And honestly, it's just the starting point.
Yeah.
You've got these tools now, these insights. What are you going to do with them?
That's the question, isn't it? So to everyone listening, keep asking those big questions, keep challenging what you think you know, and never stop learning. Who knows what you might discover?
The possibilities are endless.